All right, Stephen. So we've talked about the your adventures as a bookmaker, and obviously it's a pretty brutal sort of way of learning your trade. Would you say that your experience working as a bookmaker gives you a bit of an edge as a punter?
I think it probably it does make you treat things as a business. I mean, I've not really ever been a recreational punter. I don't chase. I don't bet on everything. I mean, if I'm sitting in front of the football on a Sunday afternoon, I might back the draw and try and trade it, but I've got no opinion or no clue on things like that. So I think it does help. I think you get a much more professional mindset of how to deal with a float, how to deal with your money, and also how to compartmentalise it. So, you know, if you want to have a bet all day on a Friday when Swindon and Hove are on, that's fine. But if there's nothing on a Saturday that interests you, there's no jump racing, then have a day off. So I do think it makes you treat your betting as a business, which is a really good habit to get into as a punter.
Okay, so we're talking a bit about discipline there, which leads me nicely on to my next question. We've already said that if betting expert, I've had a look at the site properly actually from my sins the first time yesterday, and there's lots of other sort of tipsters with various different sports, and if you follow the best of them, they're all showing a nice profit. But the other thing you notice about it also there's lots of links to bookmakers' sites, which I assume is where they get their money. So if people just went on there and followed your two tips every day, if your past results are anything to go by, they're going to win over the period of time. But we're guessing that they don't. So what is it that few punters have got the discipline?
I think that's it. I think most people, and certainly I run a football team, and all of the kids who play for the football team, they're in their 20s, will have all had an experience of betting, and mainly it will have been a negative one, that they'll have had a substantial loss early on, and a lot of them don't bet at all now as a result, or if they do, they'll have an accumulator on a Saturday, or they like going to the races or the dogs once or twice a year, and they'll take 50 quid, and if they lose 50 quid, that's it. Most punters do see it as a sort of recreational pursuit on a Saturday at a stag do with their mates. I don't think many young people go and stand in a betting shop anymore. I think that's probably finished, but online, on their phones, people haven't got the discipline. So what'll happen is, let's say someone like Mark Holder, when I was younger, and I was at university, I used to follow Mark Holder, exceptionally good judge, and you could get on. And if you just bet Mark Holder's tips, you'd make really good profits if you were disciplined. But of course, when you're young, you think you know better and all the rest of it. You want to back your own tips or go racing or have 6 bets at Cheltenham. So most punters are not disciplined, and that's why big firms like 365, Sky Bet, make an awful lot of money off recreational punters, because while they might follow a tipster who's warm or not, as the case may be, they'll still have a lot of other bets. That if there's a live match on Friday night, they'll have a bet on that. People do it because they're got a sort of action junkie mentality rather than treating it as a business. I mean, I don't want to be sneering about people like that. The whole industry relies on people like that losing money or betting money on things they enjoy, and if it's small stakes, it's absolutely fine. You're not causing any harm. It's no different to somebody having a drink or smoking or going to the theatre, is it? It's if you're getting pleasure out of it, it's fine. But if you're trying to earn your living from it, having discipline and specialising in certain areas is the secret to at least not losing money and maybe making money.
Okay, I'm interested there that you said if you're watching the football, you might sit there and bet the draw and try and trade out of it. Is that after you've done a bit of study and looked at these two teams?
No, I mean so
there's a bit of an inner recreational punter.
Yes, I guess there is in all of us that if I'm going to have to watch the football, if I'm down the pub with mates and stuff, I'll have 100 quid on the draw and try and lay less. I mean that's so there is that in everyone. Nobody is perfect. I mean, I'd like to think that I wouldn't lose too much on things that I don't know anything about, because I'm not having thousands on, and it's not. But I think it would be very. You've got to be extremely diligent and dedicated not to, from time to time, snap out of the sort of stranglehold of being really disciplined. Yeah.
And is everything on spreadsheets, and do you analyse your bets?
I've got my bank account and I can see what goes in and out of Betfair. I don't spend hours pouring over. I do spend a lot of time pricing things up and looking at form and watching back videos and all the rest of it. But I used to make copious notes. As I said before, before computers, I had huge books of notes of form cards of greyhounds, all the rest of it. But it's all online now. I've got a database for National Hunt Racing where my notes go on. If I think something's jumped left or pulled hard or didn't go on the ground or blah, 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 it's all on my database. So I can look at that each morning when I'm looking at the afternoon's racing. But I don't have anything on paper. And I used to buy we used to buy Race Sporting Life Racing Post, Simon. I used to buy that religiously. I used to get it delivered and pore over it and keep back copies of it piled up in my office upstairs. But a few years ago, I realised it's pointless. I don't ever look at them again. You know, it's habit of writing things down. So everything's online now. Everything's on a database, basically.
Well, looking back at my personal thing, I mean, I used to work at the slaughterhouse and get paid 70 quid every week on a Friday afternoon and lose a lot, apart from my mum's rent. But looking back on it, it was horrific because I had no idea about staking. Yeah. So I used to go in and have a fiver on. If it won, I'd probably have a tenner on until I lost it all. And the manager knew we were going to lose our money every week. But it did eventually teach you a lesson. But what would and my point about this is the staking. I mean, now I've got a ridiculously big bank in the bigger scheme of things, not big, but, for small stakes. Yeah. So how much would you recommend a punter would have? If they're going to start betting in 50s, how much should they have as a tank?
Well, I think you probably need 5,000 or 10,000 probably, don't you? Because then the key is to stay in second gear, not get hotted up, not get excited. I mean, you saying about working in the slaughterhouse, one of my pals, Jeff Moore, who's an exceptionally good greyhound judge, but he still works in a factory which he hates, and he's only just discovering punting discipline relatively recently. He's had years of being a very good judge but being a very bad punter, and there's plenty of people who are exceptionally good judges but don't make it paid punting. I mean, funnily enough, I think there's quite a lot of people like that who are in the media, to be honest with you, who talk a fantastic game and know the form book inside out and are very, very shrewd people, but they probably don't win punting. That's the honest truth. That's my experience when I worked on the racing SAS and the racing channel back in the day. There was a huge cabal of commentators in there who all know the form book, all knew everything about racing, but they'd all troop over to Ladbrokes betting shop and they weren't winning punters. And there's a lot of that about it. It's very hard to stay disciplined, stay focused, keep doing the right things. I think staying in second gear and not getting hotted up is the best possible advice.
Going on tilt, as they used to call it.
Going on tilt, exactly, yeah. We've all done it.
Now, you mentioned the media there. You've enjoyed the limelight a bit, working with SIS and Racing Channel and Matchbook, doing podcasts. Is a career in front of the camera still? We're doing it now. Something that you still quite fancy.
I like to think that I'm not really interested in publicity. I'd far sooner get it quietly and not boom. I know I've finally cracked to come on this with you, and it's a pleasure to. It's enjoyable, but I'd sooner be under the radar. I think you set yourself up for a fall a bit. As soon as you start I-amming or all the rest of it, you can sort of know that you're going to have about 3 losing months and the lights will be flickering, don't you? I'd much sooner be sort of have humility and not be in front of the camera. But that being said, I do a weekly YouTube thing with Shane and Ed called Jump To It for IrishRacing.com, and I absolutely love doing that because it gets your brain flowing, as this is now. The more we go on, the more things I think of. But by talking to other people and making sure you're aware of what's going on in racing, the news stories, what's run well, what's happening in betting, you do keep your brain active. I think sometimes as a professional punter, it certainly happened to me years ago, before you can become quite antisocial. You're completely wrapped up in sort of dog racing, and if you've got a family, and we've got a young son, well, he's not young anymore, he's gone to university the other day, but you need something to break your focus, to get out of that sort of shell of sitting. That being said, I do spend most days hunkering in my office till 5 o'clock in the attic.
Now, you've been successful for a long time, so but do you think betting successfully is something that can be sustained indefinitely?
I do wonder where betting's going. We touched on it earlier about these affordability checks that Betfair in particular, but other companies, Sky Bet, my friend says, are introducing it as well. That's going to make life extremely difficult. I mean, my experience with Betfair is they're getting to the point now where they're saying to you, how much do you earn every month? Well, let's say it's £4,000. That gives you, by their sort of formula, a maximum loss limit of £1,000 a month. Well, that's going to iron out everybody, because most people haven't got an income of £4,000 a month, or 10, you know, say you had an income of £10,000 a month, presumably the most you can lose gambling is something like £2,500. I think it's a quarter is what they're working on. Well, the exchange is going to die, isn't it? Because nobody will be able to have a bet. You can't have 2 losing days. I mean, so that is I have started to think more recently. I'm nearly 50. What am I going to do if there isn't betting? And that you sort of sound quite diseased when you say that. But I find when I wake up early every morning, the mental challenge of pricing things up and looking for angles and trying to find a winner or trying to lay a loser, I find that quite a good motivation. If I was waking up at 5 every morning thinking, well, I can't have a bet, that's a complete game changer, isn't it? For all of us, I'm sure anyone watching this podcast would be thinking, you know, what if I can't ever bet? You know, if that outlet's gone, and it does feel like we are heading in that direction a bit.
Okay, the last few things are just advice for people. So what's the most important lesson you've learned over the years about betting?
I would say that you never want to lose more than you can comfortably afford to. As you get older, I think when I was younger, I was, you know, throttled back, playing very, very big, certainly in relation to what I had. And it's too volatile to sustain when you're married, you've got children, a family. And the other thing I'd say, I mean, I've been married for 22 years, not that that's essential for punting. I think it's quite good to have a settled family life. You know, we've stayed in the same house for 20 years. I think that's a big, big help to come home. And my wife's long suffering, obviously, but, you know, she's been through all the ups and downs along the way. And I think it's good to have somewhere that you can come back to and you're relaxed and calm, away from the betting world. I mean, certainly when I used to come in from the dogs, huge swings relative to, you know, thousands of pounds relative to what I had in the world. And, you know, you'd toss and turn at night, not be able to sleep, you'd be thinking about what you'd done wrong. And I think it's important to try and separate betting from your normal life, really.
And the most expensive, painful lesson that you learned?
Well, I mean, I think you mustn't really bet on credit yourself or lay people credit bets. I mean, I think Ben, Star Sports Ben, has done brilliantly well. He's built Star Sports up from nothing, originally from people betting on credit, and I'm full of admiration for that, because my experience at the Dogs, admittedly, over 10 years ago now, it's not a good idea. If one person along the chain betting on credit disappears, it has a terrible knock-on effect down the line. It's very hard to recover from, so you're better off playing cash for cash. I remember when I started at the Dogs, one of the bookmakers had a sign up, no credit, or do not ask for credit because refusal often offends, and I think that's probably very good advice.
And finally, the best advice, so somebody watching this, you know, like they've watched the other ones, they're trying to improve their own game. What would be the one thing that they should take away from this from you? I
think you need to find an area where you know all of the reasons why things are priced in a certain way, whether it's 6 greyhounds or hurdlers or 2-year-olds only on the flat. Find an area where you can deal with all the bits that are involved in it and form a really good understanding of how the markets are formed.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Stephen Harris, thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon. Cheers.